Hey there. Welcome to our channel, Sleeping Pill, where stories drift softly into the night. I'm Michael, your companion on this slow journey into sleep. So close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let this gentle story carry you towards sleep. Tonight we're settling into one of those stories that unfolds so slowly, so predictably, that you'll probably fall asleep before anything remotely exciting happens. But that's exactly the point, isn't it? You're going to spend the next little while with me, following the mundane, beautiful rhythm of two people discovering each other in the last place anyone looks for romance. The office coffee break. Picture this. It's Monday morning, 8:47 a.m., and you're doing that walk. You know the one. The shuffle from your desk to the break room, half awake, operating on the fumes of a weekend that somehow vanished in 48 hours. Your eyes aren't quite open yet. Your shirt still has that fresh from the dryer crease. But by lunchtime, it'll look like you've been wrestling with spreadsheets, which, let's be honest, you have. The fluorescent lights overhead hum their familiar, mildly depressing tune. Someone's left yesterday's coffee in the pot and it smells like it's developed a personality of its own. You move through the motions. Grab the mug, the one you've been using since last Tuesday because washing it seems like a commitment you're not ready to make. Fill it halfway because the coffee maker's a little temperamental and you've learned not to trust it with a full cup. Add cream, 2 sugars. Stir with whatever pen's closest. It's Tuesday's pen. Actually, you're not sure where Monday's went. The whole process takes 4 minutes, maybe 5 if someone gets chatty about the weekend. This is your routine. Every single morning, the same walk, the same mug, the same slightly too hot coffee that burns your tongue just enough to keep you present for the elevator ride back upstairs. It's boring. Completely, utterly boring. The kind of thing you don't even register as happening. It just does, like breathing, like blinking. You've probably made this walk 300 times this year, maybe more. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, if you're watching from somewhere interesting, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where you're settling in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You settle back into your chair, coffee warming your hands. The office is quiet at this hour. Most people don't wander in until 9:15 or so, which gives you a precious window of near silence before the day properly begins. Your email inbox is sitting there, already half full of overnight messages from people across different time zones who apparently don't sleep. You'll get to those. But first, coffee. First, these 3 minutes of sitting still. The Monday morning light filters through the office windows in that particular way it does. Not quite golden, not quite gray, just sort of resigned. It matches the mood perfectly. The city outside is already moving. You can see people down on the street rushing with purpose like they know where they're going. You've got your coffee and a day that looks like it'll be exactly like all the other days. Emails, meetings, the occasional moment where you remember you have dreams that don't involve spreadsheets, then back to the spreadsheets. It's safe down here in the boring. It's quiet. It's predictable. You have no idea that predictability is about to get just slightly rearranged. Thursday morning. No, wait, it's Tuesday. You've already lost track of which day it is, which is fine. all taste the same anyway. You're back at the coffee machine, going through the exact same motions. Mug, cream, 2 sugars, that pen from somewhere. The routine is so established now that your body could probably do it in your sleep. Your brain certainly isn't doing much to help. The break room is emptier than usual today. Someone's sick, someone else is working from home, and honestly, you're not keeping close enough track of your coworkers' schedules to really know who's where anymore. It's just you, the hum of the fluorescent lights, and the coffee machine that's being particularly sluggish today. It's gurgling like it's got something to say but can't quite find the words. You get that coffee machine, you get that. And then you notice something, or rather you notice someone noticing you. There's a person standing by the far counter, the one nobody really uses because it's where old paperwork goes to die. They're not from your floor, you're pretty sure of that. You know the shapes and rhythms of your floor's break room traffic. You know that Marcus always comes in at 10 a.m. sharp and microwaves something that smells vaguely like sadness. You know that Jennifer clips her nails in here, which is objectively horrifying, but nobody's brave enough to say anything. You know these patterns the way you know your own breathing. This person doesn't fit the pattern. They're pretending to look at something on their phone, but their eyes keep drifting over toward the coffee machine. Toward you specifically. Not in a creepy way, nothing aggressive about it. Just the way you look at something that's mildly interesting. The way you watch a cloud move across the sky. Casual, automatic. The kind of thing they probably don't even realize they're doing. You pretend not to notice, of course, because that's what you do. You go about your business waiting for the coffee to finish its agonizingly slow drip. You're thinking about the spreadsheet waiting for you upstairs. You're thinking about what you might grab for lunch. You're thinking about absolutely nothing really, because it's Tuesday morning and your brain isn't firing on all cylinders yet. But now you're aware. That's the thing about noticing someone noticing you. You can't really unnotice it. They move slightly, shifting their weight from one foot to the other. They're wearing a gray cardigan over what looks like it used to be a white shirt, though it's got the faint coffee stains of someone who's been alive long enough to accept that perfection is a myth. Their hair's tied back in something that might be a bun or might just be a knot of frustration. They look tired in that specific way that means they probably stayed up late doing something that wasn't quite worth it. They look, in short, like they belong in this break room with the sad microwave smell and the non-functional printer in the corner. The coffee finishes its drip. You pull your mug out and the machine releases a tiny sigh of relief, like it's glad to be done with its job. You turn to leave, and as you're turning, your eyes meet theirs for approximately 0.8 seconds. It's not long. It's barely worth mentioning. But it happens. They give you a small nod, just a tilt of the head, a micro acknowledgement. The kind of thing that could mean anything or nothing. Could mean, I recognize you from the 3rd floor, or, hey, fellow human in a break room, or absolutely nothing at all. Your brain scrambles to interpret it, which is ridiculous because it's just a nod. You nod back because that's what people do when other people nod at them. It's called reciprocal politeness, and it's the foundation of modern society. You nod and then you leave and you're back back upstairs with your sad spreadsheet, your coffee that's already cooling down, but something small has shifted. Some tiny little gear has started turning. The kind of shift you wouldn't even register if you were a different sort of person, the kind of person who doesn't catalog these tiny moments. But you do. You catalog everything. It's part of your curse and also maybe your superpower. This person exists now in your awareness. This stranger who drinks coffee at weird times and wears a cardigan with mysterious stains. Tomorrow you'll notice if they're here. They're there Wednesday morning. You don't know why you checked, but you did. You found yourself arriving at the break room at roughly the same time as the day before, even though your schedule doesn't really demand it. You could have waited until 10 a.m. You could have made your coffee at your desk, like you sometimes do when you're feeling particularly efficient. But instead, you found yourself walking the familiar path at 8:52 a.m., right around the time you'd seen them yesterday. And there they are. Same cardigan, different shirt underneath, you think, though it's hard to tell. They're by the coffee machine this time, actually making coffee instead of loitering mysteriously by the old paperwork counter. They're moving with the kind of slow motion efficiency that suggests they're also operating on fumes and Monday level exhaustion, despite it being Wednesday. They haven't noticed you yet. You've got maybe 3 seconds before you need to decide if you're going to acknowledge the fact that you're both here or if you're just going to pretend this is a coincidence. It probably is a coincidence. People work in offices, people drink coffee. Sometimes those two facts intersect in break rooms. It doesn't mean anything. It's just statistics, just probability playing out in real time, except you keep thinking about that nod from yesterday. You move forward and they look up, and there's that moment again, that tiny flash of recognition. Except it's not quite recognition because you don't know each other. It's more like remembrance, like your faces have registered in each other's peripheral memory. And now they're seeing you again and thinking, oh, it's that person from yesterday. The person with the mug, the person who nods back. Morning, they say. And it's such a small word, so unremarkable, but it's the first actual sound they've directed at you. Not a nod, an actual word. 2 syllables. Casual, like they're just making conversation with another human in a break room, which technically they are. Morning, you respond, and your voice sounds exactly like your voice always sounds, which is somehow disappointing. You were hoping maybe you'd developed a more interesting voice overnight. But no, it's just you. Same tired inflection, same slight rasp from not quite enough sleep. They turn back to the coffee machine and you move to grab your mug from the cabinet. The silence that follows isn't awkward exactly. It's just the normal silence of 2 strangers existing in the same small space, the kind of silence that happens in elevators and waiting rooms and grocery store checkout lines. It's unremarkable, but you're remarking on it anyway. Your brain is doing that thing where it catalogs everything. The sound of the coffee brewing, the slight smell of their shampoo, something with mint or eucalyptus in it, something that suggests they're the type of person who buys the nice shampoo. The way they're tapping their fingers against their leg in a rhythm that might be unconscious or might be very, very deliberate. Rough morning already? They ask, and you realize they're looking at your mug. The one with the coffee stain on the handle that you've been meaning to replace for weeks. Rough week, you say, which is honest without being too honest. You don't want to be that person who dumps their emotional baggage on a stranger in a break room. That's what therapists are for, or wine, or that friend you text at 2 a.m. when you can't sleep. They laugh, and it's a real laugh, not one of those polite half laughs people do when someone says something mildly amusing but not actually funny. It's the kind of laugh that suggests they get it. They understand the particular exhaustion of being alive on a Wednesday in an office building where the fluorescent lights never turn off and the emails never stop coming. Same, they say. I've been here since 7 a.m. and I've already attended 2 meetings where nobody actually needed me to be there. It's like they just wanted warm bodies in chairs. You nod because you've been to those meetings too. Everyone has. Those mysterious gatherings where the agenda could have been an email, where nothing gets decided, where time simply ceases to have meaning, and you just exist in a conference room, staring at a PowerPoint that hasn't been updated since 2019. The worst, you agree? They pour their coffee, add cream, no sugar, you notice, and then they look at you again, not for long, just long enough to make eye contact, just long enough to acknowledge that something small and unremarkable has happened between you. 2 people who don't know each other have had a conversation about the specific misery of office life, and in that conversation, something has shifted slightly. Well, they say, heading toward the door. Back to the warm chair for me. Yeah, you say, same. You watch them leave and you're already thinking about tomorrow, about whether they'll be here, about whether you'll time your break to match theirs again, about whether this is going to become a thing, an actual pattern, something you can count on, something that exists in your otherwise predictable week. It's just coffee. It's just 2 people being tired in the same break room. But somehow it doesn't feel entirely like nothing. By Friday, it's become a thing. You don't know exactly when the decision was made, but somewhere between Wednesday and now, your break time has solidified into a specific window, 8:50 to 9:05 a.m., 15 minutes, give or take, just enough time to make coffee, exchange a few words, and get back upstairs before anyone notices you're gone, before the day really starts. It's a salt of meetings and emails and things that desperately need your attention for reasons nobody can quite explain. They're here every day now. Thursday, they were wearing a different cardigan, navy this time over a shirt with a tiny stain near the collar that looked suspiciously like it might be from yesterday's coffee. You noticed because you're becoming the type of person who notices these things. The small details, the patterns, the way someone holds their mug, the fact that they always add cream but never sugar, which tells you something about their tolerance for bitterness or maybe just their taste buds. Today they're here before you are. You arrive at 8:51 a.m. Yes, you've started being more precise about your timing, and they're already by the counter waiting for the coffee to brew. They're wearing the gray cardigan again, the one from Tuesday, the one that's starting to feel familiar to you. It's got a loose thread on the right pocket. You noticed it yesterday. You're wondering if you should mention it or if that would be weird. Probably weird, Mentioning that you've been paying close enough attention to their clothing to spot loose threads falls into that category of things that sounds friendly when you imagine saying it, but absolutely unhinged when you actually do. Hey, they say, turning to you. Just hey. 2 letters, but it's got the warmth of someone greeting a friend, not a stranger. The warmth of someone who's been thinking about seeing you, who's glad you're here. You feel something in your chest do a small, silly thing. Something like relief, or maybe recognition, like your body knows something your brain hasn't quite caught up to yet. Hey yourself, you say, and it's not particularly witty, but it works. It acknowledges that they said hey, and that you're here, and that this whole thing is happening deliberately now. You're not pretending anymore that this is coincidence. You're both showing up at the same time in the same place with clear intention. The coffee finishes brewing. They pull their mug out. You notice it's blue, with a very faded logo from some conference from 3 years ago. The kind of mug that accumulates in offices, free promotional items that somehow become essential to your morning routine. They turn to you and ask, so, what's on your agenda today? More pointless meetings? Allegedly, you say, I have to sit through a presentation about optimizing workflow. I have no idea what that means. I think nobody does. I think it's just something people say to sound important. They laugh again. That real laugh, the one that sounds like they actually mean it. That's every presentation ever, though. It's all just corporate mad libs. You could probably write them all using a random number generator and nobody would notice the difference. You're moving through the motions of making your coffee now, but you're also thinking about how easy this is, how easy it is to talk to them about the specific absurdities of office life, how you've somehow crossed over from being strangers who nod at each other to being people who have actual conversations, who anticipate conversations, who arrange their morning schedules around the possibility of having them. I give it 3 months before someone figures that out, you say. And then the whole corporate world collapses because we've all been replaced by algorithms. 3 months is generous, they say. I'd say 2 weeks, tops. And honestly, the algorithms would probably do a better job. At least they wouldn't spend 45 minutes talking about synergies. You're smiling now. You didn't realize you were doing it, but your face has arranged itself into an actual smile. Not a polite one, a real one. The kind that happens when someone says something that genuinely amuses you, that strikes that particular nerve, that resonates with your specific sense of humor. They're smiling too. You notice this because you're looking at them more directly now, with less pretense of casualness. You're not even trying to hide the fact that you're paying attention. I'm still not sure which floor you're on, they say. It's phrased as a casual observation, but you sense something beneath it. A question disguised as a statement. A way of acknowledging that you're still strangers, that there's still information you don't have about each other. 13, you say. Accounting department. It's as thrilling as it sounds. 14, they say. Marketing. Which is equally thrilling, just in a different way. We make PowerPoints about things nobody cares about, and then we send the PowerPoints to accounting to make sure we haven't spent too much money making them. So, we're neighbors, you say, and there's something significant about this fact that you're not quite ready to examine too closely. neighbors, 2 floors apart, close enough that they could theoretically find you upstairs if they wanted to, if they decided to take that step from break room conversations to something more deliberate. Apparently, they say, and there's something in their eyes that suggests they're thinking the same thing you are, that this proximity is significant, that it changes something about the dynamic. Even though it shouldn't, rationally speaking, nothing has actually changed. You're still just 2 people who drink coffee at the same time, except now you know they're on 14. Now you know they work in marketing. Now you know they have opinions about corporate mad libs and a sense of humor that matches yours in ways that feel almost spooky. Well, you say, because the coffee is done and the moment is starting to feel like it might tip over into something that requires more bravery than you currently possess at 8:55 a.m. on a Friday morning. I should probably get back. Try not to make any life-changing PowerPoints while I'm gone. No promises, they say, but they're already moving toward the door too. You're both retreating at the same time, which feels almost choreographed. Like you've been practicing this particular dance, the approach, the conversation, the graceful exit for weeks instead of days. At the elevator, they press the button for 14, and you press the button for 13. You stand there together in the fluorescent lit box, watching the numbers climb, and you're already thinking about Monday, about whether they'll be there on Monday, about whether this thing that's been happening between you, this small, quiet, remarkably boring thing, is going to continue. Monday morning arrives the way all Mondays do, reluctantly, like it's showing up to a party it wasn't invited to. You're back at your desk, staring at an inbox that somehow accumulated 63 new emails over the weekend, despite the fact that it was the weekend and presumably people were doing something other than work. You're drinking coffee from your mug, the stained one, still stained, and you're thinking about how you should probably wash it at some point. You're also thinking about whether they'll be at the break room at 8:50 a.m. This is ridiculous. You've known this person for 5 days. 5 days of morning conversations in a break room. 5 days of learning that they think corporate presentations are absurd and that they work in marketing and that they wear a gray cardigan more often than any other piece of clothing. 5 days is nothing. It's barely enough time to register that someone exists, let alone start reorganizing your entire morning schedule around the hope that they'll be there. And yet, at 8:48 a.m., you find yourself walking toward the break room. Not because you need coffee, you already have coffee. Not because your schedule demands it, just because the idea of not going, of sitting at your desk instead, feels somehow wrong. Like you'd be breaking an agreement that was never explicitly made, but that both of you have been honoring anyway. They're not there yet. You arrive first, which somehow feels significant. You pour a fresh cup, even though you don't really want it. You're just doing something with your hands, creating a pretense of purpose in case anyone questions why you're here. Even though nobody's questioning anything, nobody cares why you're in the break room. You're a grown adult. You're allowed to make coffee. At 8:53 they arrive. You're early, they say, and there's something pleased in their voice, like they're genuinely happy to see you, and they're not bothering to hide it, like they've crossed over into a place where pretense feels unnecessary. You're late, you counter, and it's the first time you've actually teased them. The first time you've stepped slightly outside the bounds of polite, careful conversation and into something that feels more like actual friendship, more like something that acknowledges the patterns you've been creating together. Fair, they say, and they're smiling that smile again. I was finishing an email from someone who apparently doesn't understand the concept of the weekend. Thought I'd get one more coffee in me before I have to deal with their follow-up email. The worst, you agree, and then you do something unexpected. You do something that probably falls into the category of things you should think about more carefully, but instead of thinking, you just do it. You ask, "Have you had lunch yet?" They look at you. Just looks at you for a moment like they're trying to figure out what you're asking and why you're asking it. Like they're checking to see if you're serious or if this is some kind of elaborate joke that will only make sense in retrospect. It's 8:55 a.m., they say finally. "I know," you say, and your heart is doing something weird in your chest, something fast and a little bit panicked. But maybe, I don't know, maybe at lunch, there's a place downstairs that makes decent sandwiches. Nothing fancy, just if you wanted to. You're asking them on a date. You're asking them on a lunch date, which is maybe not technically a date, but it's definitely the neighboring country to a date. It's the pre-date. It's the moment where you're both acknowledging that this thing that's been happening in the break room might actually exist outside of the break room, in the sunlight, in the real world, where things get complicated. There's a pause, long enough that you start to regret opening your mouth, long enough that you start thinking about how you can walk this back, how you can frame this as a casual thing, how you can preserve whatever this is between you without putting it at risk by trying to make it into something more defined. Then they say, "Yeah, okay, yeah, I'd like that." Just like that. No hedging, no maybe or "I'll have to check my schedule." Just a clear, simple yes. Really? You ask, because apparently your brain has decided to betray you by asking a follow-up question that nobody needed. Really, they say. I mean, assuming you're serious and not just testing to see if I'm gullible. Not testing, you say. Definitely asking. Then yes, they say. Definitely yes. Noon? Noon, you confirm. And you're already thinking about what this means. You're thinking about the fact that this changes things. The break room was safe. The break room was a contained space where you could both exist in a pleasant limbo, enjoying each other's company without having to define what that company actually means. But lunch is different. Lunch is a step in a direction. Lunch is choosing. I should probably get back, they say, but they are not moving. They're standing there, looking at you with an expression that's somewhere between nervous and happy, and exactly as confused as you feel. "Yeah," you say. "Me too." But neither of you moves for another few seconds. You're both just standing in the break room by the coffee machine that's already brewing someone else's coffee, acknowledging in silence that something has shifted, that the careful, easy rhythm you've established has just become something slightly more complicated and significantly more real. When they finally leave, they take the elevator to 14 and you take yours to 13. And you spend the entire morning staring at spreadsheets without actually seeing them, just thinking about noon. Noon arrives slowly. The morning feels like it's been running at half speed, like time has decided to move through molasses, specifically to torture you. You refresh your email 17 times. You attend a meeting where someone discusses Q4 projections and everyone nods like they understand what's being said, even though it's absolutely clear that nobody does. You eat half a protein bar at your desk, even though you're not hungry, just to have something to do with your hands. At 11:55 a.m., you stand up and head to the bathroom to make sure you don't have anything stuck in your teeth. You check your reflection in the mirror. Your shirt still has that crease from this morning, which feels appropriate. You're not trying too hard. This is just lunch. This is just you and a person who drinks coffee with you, getting sandwiches together. It's not a big deal, except it feels like a big deal. They're waiting for you by the elevator when you get downstairs. They've changed shirts, not dramatically, but you notice. It's a different shirt, one that looks slightly less like it's been through a washing machine's existential crisis. They've still got the gray cardigan on, like it's become a permanent part of their uniform. Their hair's down today, instead of tied back, and it's longer than you realized. It falls past their shoulders in a way that suggests they usually keep it up because of work, but for lunch, for this, they've let it down. Hi, they say, and it's such a simple word, but it's delivered with a kind of nervousness that makes you feel less alone in whatever you're feeling right now. Hi, you say back. You walk to the sandwich place in companionable silence. It's not an awkward silence. It's the silence of two people who are both processing the fact that you've stepped outside the break room and into the real world. The real world where you can be seen together. Where this isn't just a private thing that happens in the fluorescent lit margins of your workday. The sandwich place is exactly what you described, nothing fancy. Formica counters, a menu board with handwritten additions, the smell of bread and oil and vinegar that's somehow comforting. There's a line of people ahead of you, which is almost a relief. It gives you both something to do besides make direct eye contact. When you reach the counter, they order a turkey and avocado sandwich on wheat. You order roast beef and cheddar on rye. You both get chips. Neither of you gets a drink, which feels somehow coordinated, like you've already learned each other's preferences well enough to mirror them. You find a small table by the window. Outside, the city is doing its city thing, people rushing past, taxis honking, that particular urban energy that suggests everyone is vaguely angry and also very busy. It's a nice contrast to the quiet sandwich shop, this little pocket of calm. So, they say, and they're smiling, that nervous smile. This is weird, right? A little bit, you admit, but like good weird, I think. Good weird, they repeat like they're testing out the words. Yeah, I can work with good weird. You unwrap your sandwich, they unwrap theirs. You're both eating, which gives you something to do and also somehow makes the whole thing feel less formal. You're not on a date sitting across from each other making meaningful eye contact. You're two people eating sandwiches and having a conversation, which is somehow easier to manage. Can I ask you something? They say after a few bites. Sure, you say, even though you're suddenly nervous about what they're going to ask. Are they going to ask if you do this with other people? Are they going to ask what you want from this? Are they going to ask something that requires you to articulate feelings that you've been keeping carefully vague? What made you ask me to lunch? They ask. Like, specifically today? We could have kept doing the break room thing indefinitely. You seemed comfortable with that. It's a good question, a fair question. You take a moment to actually think about it instead of just responding automatically. I don't know, you say finally. I think I was just tired of waiting, tired of only seeing you for 15 minutes at a time. I wanted to know if you actually existed outside of the break room or if you were just this coffee break person I'd created in my head. And, they ask, do I exist outside of the break room? Apparently you do, you say. You wear different shirts. Your hair's longer than I realized. You're nervous about something, which is weirdly comforting because I'm also nervous about something. I'm not nervous, they say, but they're smiling and they're clearly lying. I'm perfectly calm. You've reorganized your chips 3 times, you point out. They look down at their chips, which are indeed arranged in a slightly different configuration than they were 30 seconds ago. They laugh, that real laugh again, and suddenly the nervousness feels less oppressive. It's just nervousness. It's just 2 people who like each other enough to be willing to feel awkward in front of each other, which is maybe the first real sign that this thing is actually happening. Fair point, they concede. I'm a little nervous, but in a good way. The way you're nervous about something you actually want to happen. Yeah, you say. That way. You eat your sandwiches. You talk about your actual jobs. Not the abstract complaints about meetings and PowerPoints, but the actual work you do. They tell you about a campaign they're working on that they're genuinely excited about. You tell them about a spreadsheet project that's actually solving a real problem, which is rare. You're both finding common ground in the parts of your work that don't actively make you want to disappear into the walls. By the time you finish eating, you're both calmer. The nervousness is transformed into something else. Something more like anticipation. Like you're both aware that something is being established here. Something small and quiet and genuinely nice. When you walk back to the office together, your shoulders are almost touching, but not quite. It's a careful distance. It's the space between people who like each other but are still learning how to express that in the daylight. At the lobby, they turn to you and say, "Same time tomorrow? Break room?" "Yeah," you say, "definitely." And you mean it. The week after lunch settles into a new rhythm. You're still meeting at the break room every morning. 8:50 a.m. is now officially your time, the time when you both somehow manage to be there simultaneously, like you've agreed to it without ever actually agreeing. But something has shifted. The conversations are different now. They have more weight to them. They're not just complaints about work. They're actual exchanges of information. You're learning things about this person that go beyond their coffee preferences and their cardigan collection. You learn that they grew up in a small town 3 hours outside the city. You learn that they moved here 5 years ago for a job that they initially hated but have slowly learned to tolerate. You learn that they have a cat named Russell, named after the character from the Pixar movie, because they adopted him when they were going through a phase where they only watched children's films. They learn that you have a weird habit of organizing your books by color instead of by author or genre. They learn that you're terrified of the ocean, which is bizarre because you've been to the beach plenty of times and nothing bad has ever happened. You can't quite explain it. It's just a feeling. A sense that the ocean is too big, too unknown, too willing to swallow you whole. These conversations happen in stolen moments. Before work, when you've managed to synchronize your commute times. During lunch, which has now become an established thing. Every day at noon, you meet downstairs and grab sandwiches or soup or whatever else the place has available. You've developed opinions about their menu. You know which sandwich they're going to order on Mondays, turkey and avocado always. You know that they get extra salt on their chips, even though they claim they're trying to cut back on sodium. Friday afternoon, they suggest coffee after work. Real coffee, not the office coffee that tastes vaguely like it was made in 1987 and has been sitting in a pot ever since. Coffee at an actual cafe, the kind where they make foam designs and ask your name to write on the cup. You agree immediately, which probably makes it too obvious how excited you are about this, but you're past the point of trying to hide your enthusiasm. They've already figured out that you like them. You've already figured out that they like you. The pretense of casual indifference feels exhausting at this point. The cafe is 3 blocks from the office. It's the kind of place that's trying very hard to be cool without actually being cool. Exposed brick, mismatched furniture, a playlist that sounds like it was curated by someone who thinks indie folk is the only genre that matters. You order a cappuccino, they order an Americano. You find a small table in the corner, away from the window. So, they say, and they're doing that thing where they're nervous again but trying to hide it. I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Your stomach does a little flip. These are the kinds of sentences that precede either very good conversations or very bad ones, and you're not entirely sure which direction this is going. Okay, you say carefully. Honest about what? What is this, they ask? Like, what are we doing? Because I've been trying not to think about it too hard, but I can't keep not thinking about it. We're having lunch every day. We're texting outside of work. I haven't mentioned that we're texting, but we are. You have my number and I have yours, which seems like a pretty significant development. And I just need to know if you're thinking about this the way I'm thinking about it, or if I'm like way off base here. It's terrifying how directly they've asked this, how they've just laid it all out without hedging or softening it. How they're looking at you with an expression that suggests they're genuinely nervous about your answer. What way are you thinking about it? You ask, because you're apparently a coward who prefers to make other people go first. I'm thinking about it like I really like you, they say. I'm thinking about it like I want to keep seeing you, like intentionally, like on dates. Real dates, not just work lunch breaks. I'm thinking about it like I'm kind of terrified because I don't know if you're on the same page or if I just made this super awkward. You take a sip of your cappuccino, which is too hot and burns your tongue slightly, which is perfect because it gives you something to react to besides the fact that your entire body is currently vibrating with the sensation of being seen and understood and chosen. I'm thinking about it that way too, you say. Like the intentional dates part, the real dates part, also the terrified part, because I don't actually date that much, and I'm not entirely sure what I'm supposed to do with the fact that I like you this much this quickly. So they pause, searching for the word. Together? Is that the right word? I think so, you say, unless you have a better word. I don't, they say. Together sounds good. Together sounds exactly right. You're smiling at each other across the table like two idiots, and someone at the next table glances over, probably wondering why you're grinning so hard at a coffee shop on a Friday afternoon. But you don't really care. You're too busy processing the fact that this thing you've been carefully not naming has just been named, that it's official, or as official as these things can be when they started in a break room over a bad cup of coffee. So what now, you ask? Now, they say, I think we finish our coffee and then maybe we go for a walk. It's nice out, and I want to show you something. You nod, you finish your coffee. You stand up and leave the cafe together, and this time, when your shoulders touch, it's not accidental. It's deliberate. It's a choice. And that choice feels like the beginning of something, the moment when you stop existing in limbo and start existing in a direction. The walk takes you through parts of the city you don't usually frequent. They're leading you somewhere with purpose, but they're not telling you where. You're walking alongside them, and your hands are close enough that you could hold hands if you wanted to, but neither of you has quite made that move yet. It feels like something you're both building toward, but not quite ready for. Like there's a natural progression to these things, and you're both instinctively understanding it. So Russell, you say, because you're still processing the fact that they have a cat named after a Pixar character. Does he have a personality, or is he just a normal cat who exists in your apartment and judges you? Oh, he's deeply judgmental, they say. He's got this look he does when you're doing something he doesn't approve of. I call it the Russell stare. It's like he's personally disappointed in you on a spiritual level. I think that's where the Pixar connection really comes through. That whole vibe of being disappointed but also secretly caring. That's the most cat description I've ever heard, you say. Russell is a very philosophical cat, they defend. He has thoughts, deep thoughts. Most of them seem to be about the fact that his food bowl is empty, but I think there's more going on in there. You're walking past a park now. It's one of those small urban parks that you pass all the time, but never actually stop in. The kind of place that exists in the margins of the city, squeezed between office buildings and apartment complexes. There are trees, though, actual trees with leaves that are starting to turn colors because it's creeping toward autumn. There are benches. There's a small pond with a handful of ducks floating around like they've got nowhere to be and all the time in the world to get there. This is it, they say, and they guide you toward one of the benches. It overlooks the pond, which is catching the late afternoon light in a way that makes it look almost peaceful, almost like you're not in the middle of a city with millions of people surrounding you. You sit down. They sit down next to you, close enough that you're almost touching, but not quite. You're both looking out at the pond. You're both processing the fact that you've just gone from break room coffee drinkers to people who go for walks together and sit on benches in parks. I come here sometimes, they say. when work gets particularly ridiculous, when the emails feel overwhelming and the meetings feel pointless, and I need to remember that there's a world outside of the office. There's a bench here where you can just sit and watch the ducks be ducks. And somehow that fixes your entire perspective. You realize that none of it matters that much. The presentation that seems so important on Tuesday, the ducks don't care. They're just doing their duck things, floating around, being completely unbothered by the fact that marketing campaigns exist. The ducks sound wise, you say. Incredibly wise, they agree. I think they're onto something with their whole approach to life. There's a lot to be learned from ducks. You sit there for a while without talking. It's comfortable silence. The kind where you're not waiting for someone to say something. You're just existing in the same space, watching ducks do duck things. You're thinking about how strange it is that 2 weeks ago you didn't know this person existed, and now you're spending your Friday afternoon sitting in parks with them, learning about their philosophy on ducks. I'm really glad you asked me to lunch, they say eventually. I'm really glad you said yes, you say back. They reach over and take your hand. It's such a simple gesture, but it feels significant. It's the moment when you stop existing in the careful space between friends and something more, and you just acknowledge that you're choosing to hold hands, that you're choosing this, that you're both aware of what this means. I was terrified I'd imagine the whole thing, they say. Like, I'd built you up in my head as this person who was interested in me, and then lunch would happen and you'd actually just be polite, and I'd have to go back to drinking coffee alone and pretending I didn't notice when you weren't there. You noticed? You ask. Of course I noticed, they say. There was one day last week where you didn't show up. I think you were sick or something, and the break room felt completely different. It was just the break room again, not our break room. It was depressing. I spent the whole day checking my email to see if you'd sent me a message, but you hadn't, which made sense because you were sick and probably not thinking about the break room at all. I was thinking about it, you say. I was home feeling miserable, and I kept thinking about how you'd probably be at the coffee machine, wondering where I was. I was, they confirm. I was absolutely wondering. And I was also slightly annoyed at myself for caring this much about someone I barely knew. And now, you ask? Now I'm less annoyed, they say. Now I'm kind of just accepting that this is happening and trying to enjoy it instead of questioning it. You squeeze their hand. The ducks are still floating around, completely unbothered by the fact that you're sitting on a bench, making decisions about your life. The city is still happening around you. You can hear traffic in the distance, the ambient noise of urban existence. But here, on this bench, in this park, it feels like you're in your own little pocket of the world. Do you want to get dinner? They ask. Like, a real dinner tomorrow? I could make something, or we could go somewhere. I'm flexible. I just want to keep doing this, keep building this, whatever this is. Yeah, you say. Yeah, I want that too. And you do. You really, genuinely do. Dinner at their apartment is somehow both exactly what you expected and completely surprising. You'd built it up in your head as this monumental thing, the first time you'd be in their actual living space, the first time you'd be seeing them outside of work clothes and coffee breaks. But when you arrive on Saturday evening with a bottle of wine you spent way too long selecting at the store, it feels natural, it feels right. Their apartment is small, one bedroom, a living room that's been arranged to feel bigger than it is, a kitchen that's more of a concept than an actual functional cooking space. But it's theirs, and you can see them in it. You can see them in the bookshelves that are organized completely haphazardly. Some books stacked horizontally, some vertically, some just piled in corners like they ran out of space and decided to abandon the whole organizational concept. You can see them in the art on the walls, which is mostly prints from bookstores and museums, mixed with a few photographs that look like they might be from travels. You can see them in the fact that there's a fuzzy cat blanket draped over the couch, which is presumably for Russell, though Russell is nowhere to be seen at the moment. He's hiding, they explain, noticing you looking around for the cat. He gets weird about new people. He'll come out eventually and judge you from a distance before deciding whether you're worth his time. I'm nervous about Russell's approval, you say. You should be, they say. Russell's standards are extremely high, but I have a good feeling. He's never met anyone I brought home before, so if he doesn't actively attack you, I'm going to take that as a ringing endorsement. They've made pasta. It's not fancy. It's literally just pasta with a sauce that they made from scratch, which is somehow more impressive than if they'd made something complicated. There's garlic bread, there's salad, there's the bottle of wine you brought, which they've opened and are pouring into mismatched glasses. I should probably tell you, they say as you're eating, that I'm not great at this, at dating, at relationships. I tend to overthink things and then say weird stuff and then regret it for weeks afterward. I'm not great at it either, you admit. I've only been in a couple of relationships, and they both kind of ended because I couldn't figure out how to stop being weird about them. Like, I was so worried about messing up that I eventually messed up by being anxious about messing up. That's very meta, they say. It is, you agree. But I'm trying to not do that this time. I'm trying to just let it happen. Let this be what it is, without constantly analyzing it. How's that working for you so far? They ask. Honestly, I'm still anxious about it, you say. But the anxiety feels different. It feels less like I'm going to ruin this and more like I'm just nervous because I care about it. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, they say. That's healthy anxiety. That's the good kind. After dinner, you move to the couch. Russell emerges from wherever he's been hiding and investigates you thoroughly. He sniffs your shoes. He rubs against your leg. He jumps up onto the couch arm and stares at you with an expression that is indeed deeply judgmental. Then, inexplicably, he jumps into your lap and starts purring. Wow, they say, Russell really likes you. I wasn't expecting that. He's usually much more standoffish. Maybe he can sense that I'm a cat person at heart, you say, stroking Russell's head. Russell purrs louder, like he's personally approving this statement. Or maybe he's just trying to mess with me, they say. Russell's kind of a chaos agent. He'll be nice to you for 10 minutes and then knock something off a shelf just to remind everyone who's actually in charge. You're sitting close to each other on the couch. Russell is between you, creating a soft barrier of cat that's somehow less awkward than it could be. The lights are dimmed, There's music playing from somewhere, something soft and instrumental, the kind of music that's designed for background ambiance rather than active listening. "Can I ask you something?" they say. "Always," you say. "Do you think this is moving too fast?" they ask. "Like 2 weeks ago, we didn't know each other, and now we're eating dinner at my apartment with my cat judging us. Does that feel fast to you?" You think about it honestly. "It feels fast," you say. "But it doesn't feel wrong. Like rationally, I know it's fast. We barely know each other. There's probably 1,000 things we're going to learn about each other that might be deal breakers. But emotionally, it feels exactly right." "Yeah," they say. "That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page about that." Russell hops off the couch and wanders away, apparently bored with the human interaction. They shift closer to you, and you're both very aware that you're now in the space where things could escalate, where this could become physical in ways that have been carefully avoided so far. "Is it okay if I kiss you?" they ask, and it's such a direct, simple question that it makes you laugh. "Yeah," you say. "Yeah, that's very okay." And they do. It's soft and tentative, like they're still not entirely sure this is real. Like they're half expecting you to vanish at any moment. You kiss back with the same careful tenderness, and it feels like all the coffee breaks and lunch dates and park bench moments have been leading to this simple, ordinary, completely boring moment where you're sitting on their couch and kissing someone you really like. When you pull back, you're both smiling. It's not a dramatic moment. It's quiet and domestic and exactly as unexciting as it should be. It's perfect. A month passes in a way that feels both impossibly fast and completely natural. The break room coffee ritual has transformed into something almost ceremonial at this point. You're still meeting at 8:50 a.m. every morning, but now it's not just about the coffee or the 15 minutes of conversation before work. It's about the fact that you've built something consistent in your life, something you can count on, something that matters. You've learned that they're a morning person who somehow still complains about mornings. You've learned that they're meticulous about their work, but completely chaotic in their personal life. Their apartment is increasingly cluttered with things they're going to organize eventually, but probably never will. You've learned that they have a habit of buying clothes they never wear and then feeling guilty about it. You've learned that they're afraid of disappointing people, which is why they tend to say yes to too many things and then spend the week regretting it. They've learned that you have a weird routine where you organize your apartment by color on Sunday nights when you can't sleep. They've learned that you're actually incredibly ambitious in ways you don't talk about much. You have plans and goals that you've been keeping tucked away because you're afraid of jinxing them. They've learned that you're funnier than you initially seem, that you do this thing where you build jokes slowly over the course of conversations and then land them perfectly. They've learned that you have abandonment issues that manifest as you over-apologizing for things that aren't your fault. You've met each other's friends. This was terrifying, but it went well. Their friends immediately seem to understand why they like you. Your friends immediately seem to understand why you like them. Everyone got along in that way that makes you realize this isn't just a fun thing that's going to fizzle out in a few months. This is something people are already taking seriously. You've had fights, small ones mostly. One fight was about how much time you were spending together. They thought it wasn't enough, you were worried it was too much. One fight was about communication styles. They wanted you to talk about your feelings more. You wanted them to process things internally before discussing them. One fight was about absolutely nothing. You were both tired and irritable and looking for something to be mad about. So you found it. But you've also learned how to fight in a way that doesn't feel catastrophic. You've learned that disagreeing doesn't mean you're going to break up. You've learned that you can say things that hurt each other and still come back from it. You've learned that love, because that's what this is now, though you haven't said it out loud yet, requires effort in ways that go beyond just liking someone. Today is a Saturday and you're at their apartment. This has become your weekend routine. You spend Saturday here and they spend Sunday at your place, and it's become so natural that you're starting to think about what it would mean if this became permanent. If you stopped splitting your time and actually just lived together. You're sitting on the couch, the same couch where you had your first kiss, and they're resting their head on your shoulder. Russell is draped across both of your laps in the way cats do when they've decided you're acceptable furniture. There's a movie playing on the TV, but neither of you is really watching it. You're just existing in the comfortable silence of people who don't need to fill every moment with conversation. "Can I tell you something?" they say, breaking the silence. "Of course," you say. "I keep thinking about how we met," they say. "Like, how weird it is that we almost didn't meet at all. If you'd taken your coffee break 5 minutes later that day, I would have missed you. If I'd decided to make coffee at my desk instead of going to the break room, you would have never noticed me. It's just the randomness of it makes me realize how lucky we are." "We are lucky," you agree. "I was thinking about that the other day. How if any single thing had been different, we wouldn't be here right now." "It's terrifying," they say. "Like, I could have gone my entire life without meeting you, and I never would have known what I was missing. I would have just existed in my apartment with Russell, making PowerPoints about things nobody cares about, and I would have never known that this was possible." "But it is," you say. "We did find each other. We're here." "I know," they say. "I'm just being dramatic and philosophical. Sorry. I'm in one of those moods where I'm thinking about the fragility of existence and how easily things could have been completely different." "That's not dramatic," you say. "That's just being human. We all think about that stuff sometimes." They shift so they can look at you. Russell protests this interruption to his comfort and jumps down from the couch with an expression of profound betrayal. "I love you," they say, and it's so sudden and simple that it takes you a moment to process the words. "I know we haven't said it yet, and I know it's maybe too soon to say it, but I've been thinking it for weeks now, and I'm tired of not saying it. I love you. I love that you organize things by color. I love that you're anxious about things, but you try anyway. I love that you make terrible jokes and then laugh at them before anyone else can. I love that you showed up in the break room that day and made my entire life different. Your chest feels tight. Your throat feels tight. You're trying to figure out how to say this back because you do love them. You've been loving them for weeks now. You've just been terrified of saying it out loud because saying things out loud makes them real in ways that thinking them doesn't. I love you too, you say, and your voice is smaller than you expected. I'm terrified of saying it because now it's real and concrete and I can't take it back. But I do. I really do. They kiss you, and Russell watches from across the room with what appears to be disgust at this display of emotion. The movie continues playing on the TV, but you're not watching it. You're just holding each other on this couch in this apartment that's becoming more and more yours every time you visit. This is what boring looks like when it's actually wonderful. This is what ordinary becomes when you're doing it with someone who makes it extraordinary just by being there. It happens sooner than you thought it would, the conversation about moving in together. At first, it's tossed out as a joke. You're sitting in your apartment eating takeout from that place down the street that always underseasons their rice but nails the dumplings every time. They're telling you about how their landlord is raising their rent again, how their tiny kitchen is even less functional since a pipe started leaking last week. You could just move in here, you say, half teasing, half serious. They laugh. With your color-coordinated bookshelves and your terrifyingly organized sock drawer, I don't think Russell's ready for that kind of discipline. I could loosen up, you offer. I mean, for you and Russell, I could probably let the book organization go a little bit, maybe even mix up my socks. It's a silly conversation, but it's also not. It's a conversation that happens when two people have reached that stage in a relationship where the logistics start to matter, where you look at the rent increases and the leaking pipes and the endless commutes between apartments and realize that sharing space would solve a lot of problems and would make a lot of things more wonderful too. Over the next week, you both start talking about it more seriously. It's not just about the broken sink or the landlord who can't return a phone call. It's about the fact that your lives are overlapping in ways that make separate apartments feel almost pointless. Every night you're at each other's place. Every morning, you're splitting breakfast duties. Russell has started leaving toys at your apartment, which feels like some kind of feline declaration of intention. There are logistical considerations. What happens to their lease? Where will Russell sleep, and will he cope with your dog-eared copy of War and Peace taking up valuable couch space? What about the plants? Who gets to decorate the living room? Who's in charge of dinner on Wednesdays when both of you work late? You spend evenings weighing pros and cons. You make lists which you promptly ignore in favor of sitting on the couch together and making each other laugh. You wonder aloud whether anyone actually enjoys shopping for new bath towels together. You talk about future plans. Are you moving in because it's easier? Or because you're ready to take this step? Are you testing compatibility? Or just acknowledging what everyone around you already suspects? That you're headed in the same direction, and the next logical step is just to do it? Finally, one Friday, after work, you sit together in your apartment. The sun is setting, turning your walls a soft tangerine. Russell leaps onto the windowsill and surveys his domain. You look at the person sitting next to you who has become home in a way that no apartment, no organized bookshelf, no perfectly arranged coffee mug ever could. Let's do it, you say. Let's move in together. We'll deal with the landlord and the sock drawer and the cat. We'll figure it out. I want us to wake up in the same place every day. They smile, and it's the kind of smile that's equal parts excitement and terror and genuine love. Okay, they say. Let's do it. It's not a proposal. It's not supposed to be. It's not dramatic or cinematic. It's just real, measured, and deeply, quietly happy. Within a month, you're hauling boxes up the stairs, rearranging furniture, rehoming plants, carving out space for new routines. Russell adjusts with only minimal complaints, staking his claim on the coziest corner of your bed. Your life, which was already entangled with theirs, becomes impossibly, wonderfully interwoven. And every morning you're still at the coffee machine together at 8:50 a.m., pouring mugs and swapping jokes, savoring the beauty and boring and steady and everyday love. Sharing a home brings a new stage, a mix of comfort, challenge, and small surprises. The first few weeks are filled with the novelty of it, figuring out where glasses should go, how many throw blankets is too many, and which drawer makes sense for utensils and takeout menus. For the most part, it feels like a sleepover that never ends. There's laughter, inside jokes about Russell's new favorite hiding spot, and the satisfying sense of coming home not to an empty apartment, but to someone already in the kitchen making tea. But beneath the coziness, little differences begin to show. You thought you were a morning person until you saw what morning person really means when someone else is joyfully singing to the kettle at 6:30 a.m. They have a habit of leaving shoes by the door, and you have a habit of moving them to the closet only for them to reappear the next day. Your laundry strategy is when there's nothing left to wear, while theirs involves color-coded bins and a weekly schedule. Those differences are mostly harmless, but sometimes they rub just enough to sting. There's a bicker over whether to use the good mugs for guests only or every day. There's tension when one of you needs time alone but doesn't want to hurt the other's feelings. Sometimes conversations about bills and who's responsible for what get tense, especially after a tiring workday. You're both suddenly very aware that you can't just close your own apartment door after an argument. There's no quick retreat. If you need distance, you're taking a walk around the block or retreating to the bathroom to regroup. The everyday routines that first felt sweet and endearing become, at times, pesky realities you can't ignore. But this is the quietly remarkable part. You talk about it. You laugh through the weird fights and learn to say what you need out loud, even if it feels awkward. You both get better at picking battles, at deciding a stray pair of shoes or a pile of laundry sometimes isn't worth a storm. Instead, you set little rules together. Who handles dinner? Who does which chores? Even how to call a timeout on an argument. And slowly, you get better at living in each other's pockets while also carving out moments to be yourself within the shared space. Through all these adjustments, what grows is not just your shared routine, but your shared resilience, and understanding that what matters most isn't whether you always agree, but how you keep coming back day after day, choosing to make it work. Living together brings its own set of challenges, even when you love each other. Some days, you might find yourself irritated by little habits, the way they leave cups on the counter instead of the dishwasher, or how you always forget to put the lid back on the toothpaste tube. These small annoyances can build up if left unspoken. Communication becomes essential. When frustration bubbles up, the key is to talk openly without blame. Saying something like, "I feel overwhelmed when the kitchen is messy," works better than accusatory statements. Both of you need to listen actively to understand where the other is coming from instead of defending your actions. Time management also becomes tricky as you balance work, personal interests, and couple time. It's easy to either overcommit to each other or feel neglected amid busy schedules. Setting boundaries helps, like agreeing on quiet time or solo activities to preserve independence while nurturing your bond. Financial differences may arise too, such as disagreements on spending habits or budgeting priorities. Transparency helps here. Share your financial goals and create plans that respect both your perspectives. Emotional support is vital. You might have moments of insecurity, stress, or doubt. Being patient, empathetic, and offering reassurance without rushing to fix things creates a safe emotional space. Lastly, it's normal for life goals to evolve. Perhaps one wants to change careers or move cities. Navigating this requires honest conversations, flexibility, and mutual support to keep the relationship aligned. In all, living together means learning to coexist with all your differences while cherishing the ordinary, boring, yet deeply comforting moments that make your love your own.